So we will resume now by Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. And as we mentioned yesterday, for every organization, we need to know the date of incorporation, date it was established, what are the major objectives, who are the members, is it mandatory or not, and what are the documents that they have issued. So let's have a quick review on FATF. Establishment, 1989. The members are countries. The objective is spreading the AML message. What they have issued, recommendations, papers, typologies. And we mentioned that the only thing which is mandatory for the members is the recommendations. Okay? We'll talk now about Basel Committee. Establishment, 1974, by the G10 countries. The G10 countries nowadays are 11 nations, 11 countries. The members here are the central bank governors or the heads of the supervisory authorities in countries where central bank does not have a supervisory role. Right? Is it mandatory? No, not mandatory. What they have issued? They have issued papers, okay? And their main objective is mainly the risk management and the banking operations. That's their main objective, okay? If we talk, and I believe Ram requested that we discuss more about the 2016. So the 2016 paper is one of the most beautiful papers ever because it actually tackled on many things. It tackled about corporate governance, which is something new. And in the morning today, when our colleague at the back, she was asking about the due diligence, and I related that to as part of the good governance, that having the proper due diligence enables you to take the right decision. Taking a right decision and being proactive is governance. So that's why I always say there is no bad governance. There is poor management and there is good management. But once you have governance, governance is always a good management. So governance is either you have it or you don't have it. But for management, it can be poor management, it can be effective management, it can be proactive, it can be reactive. But in governance, it must take into consideration the risk, it must take into consideration the due diligence, it is proactive, it ensures compliance, it ensures performance, it ensures control. All this is part of the corporate governance. So it cannot go bad. If you have all this element, that means you are okay. So that's one of the things also that the Basel Committee have started to tackle. The word governance is, in my opinion, one of the best things that they have added to this 2016 paper. So the first thing, they identified the importance of the risk analysis and governance. They mentioned clearly the word governance, the risk analysis as part of the governance process. Right? So that's the first issue that they have tackled. The second thing, they spoke about as part of the compliance. We always say that compliance is everybody's responsibility. That means you need to have different lines of defenses. So I always should have a first line of defense, second line of defense, third line of defense, different lines of defenses, because it is always a maker and checker game. Somebody makes, somebody checks. Somebody checks on the one who checks. So you have first, second, third line of support. So the first line of support is the business. And that's why I remember my shortest interview to hire a head of compliance was just 2 minutes. So the person applying for a chief compliance officer, the head of compliance, I asked him one question. I said, describe me your role in just one small sentence or 3 words. Think, take your time. Just give me your role. Don't tell me stories. Don't explain to me what is your role. Just brief it to me in 2 or 3 words forming one proper sentence. He said, my role is to do compliance. I said, thank you. He said, what? I said, interview is finished. Your role is not to do compliance. Your role is to guide, monitor, and report. That's your role as a chief compliance officer. Guidance, monitoring, and reporting. You don't do compliance. Compliance is not happening in your department. Compliance is happening at the business place. when I put the KYC guidelines, I don't take the KYC form as the head of compliance or the compliance department to go and fill the KYC myself. I don't do that. But I set the guideline. What is the regulatory framework as per the central bank requirements for KYC? We need 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that part of the customer application form? Did I make sure that whatever my regulator is requesting as KYC requirement, is it embedded in my customer application form or not? Who will do it? It's the business. Some compliance officer said, okay, well, I will volunteer to do it. That volunteering is a negative thing. Why? Because you became a maker. Who's the checker? You are the same one? So you did it and you are checking on yourself? That's an internal control weakness. So don't volunteer. Sometimes people think that when they volunteer, that's a good thing. No, when you volunteer, you could get that you don't meet expectation because you've done a violation by your volunteering. Like, I remember one of the banks, I was head of compliance, and they offered to give me an access to change customer information or to update customer information. I said that access needs to be taken right away, right now. I will not accept something like this. Why? Because I'm not supposed to update any customer information by myself. I give you instruction that this needs to be updated, you update it, I check it. If I updated it myself, who will check me? That will be conflict. I cannot take any executive role, cannot take any business role. So these things form a great importance. People, they think that they are taking the extra mile away and they end up getting fined or they end up getting fired from their jobs. And they say, look, management is not appreciating what we have done. I have even taken an extra step. I've taken some work which is additional to my work. Nobody told you to do that. Do what is required from you. It's already, there is a lot in your plate already. Our challenge is to do what is required from us to do, not to take something extra that can pose a conflict. So the first line of defense is the business always. And that's why in the US, if I as a training company, I go and say, okay, I have a training course. The name of the course is Building an AML Program. I will not get a single registration, not one. What will be the feedback about my firm, about my company? They will say, where is this guy living? They are living 2 generations backward. What is it building a compliance program? Now they moved from this to building a compliance culture. That's even old there. Now the new course that will sell like hotcakes in the US, moving from a compliance culture to a culture of integrity. That's something that they want to attend. But building a compliance program, you are very old. How the compliance program will work without culture? How the compliance culture will be built without integrity? If you cannot trust and are checking the ethics of your team, whom are the first line of defense? Imagine your first line of defense is a teller who doesn't have ethics. Can you have anything? Just a waste of time. So the first line of defense is always the business. That's why I always, when I train my colleagues at the front line, I tell them, guys, you are my eyes. I see the risk through your eyes. Customer coming to the counter and saying, guys, I want to deposit, I have a large amount. What is the amount that I need to deposit so that my name does not go to central bank? How would I know it as a compliance officer sitting in my office? How would I know that? Impossible. Why would a customer be concerned whether his name will appear or not? If this is my money, if this money is genuine, I don't really care. If I have $500,000 today and I want to deposit it, and this $500,000 is supported, is genuine, I wouldn't care if my name will go to central bank or to regulator or not. I will still deposit this amount. But when I start to structure it, that means there's something I'm worried about and I want to hide. That's a tip that the first line of defense should pass to me as an AML department, as a compliance department. So the first line of defense always is at the business side. Many things you observe by your own eyes. One time I was there and I was training the frontliners. After a certain transaction here in UAE, I told them that there's a problem. I waited. I discovered it because I'm a certified fraud examiner. After everything is done and after the customer finished and he signed the forms and everything, I looked at the RM. I said, did you notice anything? He said, no, everything is fine. I said, what do you think about this customer? He's your customer? He said, yes, I know him. I'm his RM. I'm his relationship manager. I said, guess what? This is not the customer. He said, are you kidding me? Here's the customer. Here's the ID. I know him. I know how does he look like. I even compared the ID to the guy. I said, he's not the customer. How did I figure it out? When he was signing, he was drawing his signature. I said, no way. I will resign my job. I will resign my career as a fraud examiner if this was my customer. And guess what? He investigated, and it is his twin brother. How did I discover it? A person who's signing. A person who signs, I can sign closing my eyes. But a person drawing his signature, why? Why would a customer do that? And I insisted. Everybody said, no, you are wrong. I said, no, I'll stand to this. This can never be the customer. And under lots of pressure from the RM, he confessed that, yes, because my brother is very busy, and I came to do this on behalf of my brother. He even called the brother and he said, yes, I authorized him. I said, but this is fraud. This is fraud.
So in the due diligence, we should check if they have twin brothers and sisters?
No, I mean, your observation on when, that's why we always say, when I ask the customer to sign, I don't get the signature from him at home. I need to observe him, how he signs. And that's why, these small things, people say, why you are complicating the things? Why the customer must sign in front of me? Why the customer must sign with the pen of the bank, not with his own pen? These small things has lots of sense. Why with my pen, not with his own pen? Why he has to sign in front of me? Because I want to see how he signs. How will I get this if I got an application which was already signed? How will I discover? I would have never discovered this person. So as I said, the first line of defense is always the business. Those who are facing the enemy, I would say. This is one of the most beautiful things that Basel paper of 2016 have added. I can satisfy all my KYC requirements. And trust me, at the end, I will put you that you have no KYC because you've done everything wrong.
Mr. Hissam, in slide 170, CDD for banks paper, the last point, there's 3 points on that slide.
Of course, 170 will be different than what I have, but 2001? 2001? That's an old one. Yeah, that's an old one.
No, there is 3 points. The third point
Any person, entity connected with the financial.
This is the one? Hold on. I need to... This one, right? This is the one, right? Yeah, yeah. I will. I'll come to it. Yeah. I haven't reached it. No, I haven't reached it yet. So I'll come to it. Okay? So, back to 2016. So, as I said, the 3 line of defenses. The first line of defense is the business. The business are responsible for compliance, are responsible for the due diligence. As I told you, when I give you the KYC form, your responsibility is not just to fill it blindly. No, your responsibility is to observe the customer filling it, is to make sure that you review what the customer have stated. Purpose of opening the account, drug trading. Is this acceptable? No. Purpose of maintaining a minor account, trading and investment. No. So, you are my first line of defense. Second line of defense is the AML compliance function. And that's why when I implement an AML, we have done more than 150 implementations worldwide, including regulators. I've done also AML implementation for the State Bank of Vietnam, for Central Bank of Jordan, Central Bank of Syria before. 3 or 4 regulators have done for them AML system monitoring from a regulator side. When we do an AML implementation for a bank, I always make sure that the alert, when it is generated, it goes to the account manager first. why do I need to generate the alert to the account, to the AML department? What will I do with it? Ultimately, what I need to do is that I need to send it back to the relationship manager to put his 2 cents. He needs to put his comments. What is this transaction all about? You need to give me that. So why do I need the alert to be generated to me as an AML department? No, it should be generated to you. When it gets generated to you, you must input your comments because you are the relationship manager. You know the client 100 times better than me. When you put this, the alert comes back to me. In this case, again, our colleague's question, I made my due diligence. I got all the information that will enable me to take a decision. But getting an alert, well, there is a large cash deposit. Okay, what does the RM say to that? Was it supported? Did he provide a proper justification? I need to know that. But when I get a large cash deposit that has been justified as so and so, the customer provided a proof of sale of a property attached, my job is done. I can form a proper decision to close this case that, well, yes, although there is a change in profile, but that change in profile is supported and there's a normal banking justification, I can close this case. If anybody else came and asked me from a regulator side, why did you close the case? I have full proof that it was not willful blindness. No, I closed this case based on facts. This is how things should be. So the first line of defense is business. The second line of defense is always the AML department. And that's why, even if you look at the routing of the AML alert itself, it has to follow the same route. So business, then the AML department as the second line of defense. The third line of defense. Yesterday when we spoke about the 4 elements of the, or 5 elements of the AML program, we mentioned among the elements, element number 4 is independent assessment, means independent audit. So, I may be an audit. I cannot audit myself. Why? Not because I don't know how to audit, because I'm the maker. I cannot be the checker as well. So the auditor needs somebody to audit him. I'm a AML department. I'm a checker for other departments, but I cannot be checker on myself, except if I'm doing self-assessment. But that's not an independent assessment. Independent assessment remains one of the main elements of the AML program. So I need, the third line of defense is the audit. The audit, where is the audit? Have they independently assessed the AML function, or they have not? So that's the third line of defense. And that's why in the bank we have lots of control functions, control points, like compliance, like risk management, like audit. And these functions, they need to talk to each other. That's why we go back to the corporate governance. Are they working in silos, or are they talking to each other? If they're working in silos, without looking, I can issue a report mentioning that none of them is doing his job. None. And I can sign, I stamp, and I'm responsible on this. Very simple. How you as a head of compliance can convince me that you've done your job if you have not spoken to the head of risk. In the risk management department, aren't there anything which is related to compliance? That there are certain regulations from central bank related to risk management? There is or not? How did I make sure that this has been done if I haven't spoken to the head of risk? Right or no? I haven't spoken to the head of audit. Did I get my program audited? Did I make sure that the audit is ensuring compliance with the policies and procedures that I have already made sure that it is in line with the laws and regulations or not? There is something common between us, the policies and procedures. It's common between the compliance and the audit. As a compliance officer, my job is not to ensure compliance with policies and procedures, but my job is to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. To ensure compliance with laws and regulations, I need to make sure that the policies and procedures are in line with the laws and regulations. Right or no? So there is a common commodity between these two departments. The guy who's heading the risk, How can he finish his job if he didn't assess the legal risk? Compliance is a legal risk, right or no? How did you assess the legal risk if you don't know what the compliance people are doing? How did you assess the operational risk if you don't know what the internal audit is doing? Impossible. You cannot convince me. If these people are working in silos, I'm telling you, none of them have done his job. Completely, at least. I don't want to say that they've done nothing, but they have not finished their job. Yes?
It says here that the internal audit should report to audit committee. Okay, and then who will audit the internal audit?
The external auditor. External auditor will come, and the first thing as external auditor, when I used to be working as financial auditor, the first thing I used to ask about, where is the report of the internal audit? I ask for that. Yeah? So, we understood the 3 lines of defenses. The first line of defense always must be the business. Compliance starts there, not in my department. It starts there. My role is to guide, monitor the compliance, and report any non-compliance, because it is a legal risk. So in case of any illegal act, how do you deal with that risk? How you manage this risk? Through reporting. You see how the functions are happening in the bank? When we understand our role, we will be able to perform it. When we are vague, that's why I'm telling you, again, more than 80% of the people working in this field, they don't know what is the difference between compliance and audit. Who does what? Including the department. They say, well, the auditors come, the compliance come, isn't this duplication? Why don't they coordinate with each other and they make only one visit? No, everybody has his own angle, has his own perspective in doing the inspection. The audit, I come and audit to check operational side, to check compliance with policies and procedures. The compliance come from a regulatory perspective to ensure compliance with laws and regulations or regulatory framework. These are different angles. People who think it's the same. No, it's not the same. Let's give an example. If today I came as a compliance department, the central bank requires in UAE data retention for 5 years. The bank issued their policy saying that we are going to retain the customer information or data for 8 years. As a central bank, do you have a problem? No. As a compliance, do I have a problem? No. So, when I reviewed the policy to approve it from a compliance perspective, I approved it. 8 is larger than 5. If you want to take an extra measure, good luck. What happened? Actually, they have did a data retention of 6 years. The actual. So the policy is saying 8, the regulator is saying 5, the actual data retention is 6. As a compliance, do I have a problem? No. Auditor? I have. Why? Non-compliance with policies and procedures. You wrote 8, you kept it for 6. Either you put down the 8 to 6, or you better keep it for 8 as you have mentioned in your policies and procedures. A different scenario. I wrote 8, the regulation is 5, I actually kept it for 4. Compliance will have an issue, audit will have an issue. Why compliance have an issue? Because 4 is less than 5. Audit will have an issue because 4 is less than 8. So we are not duplicating our work. Everybody has a different perspective. And that's what many people don't understand. Why do we need compliance? And that's why, well, I have done a cost saving. The chief compliance officer is the same one as the chief internal auditor. Thank you. Sometimes I write my first finding as early as exchanging business cards. When I exchange a business card with somebody from the bank, he's a CCO and he's a CIA. Thank you. This is my first finding. Conflict of interest. That's the first finding, before even stepping in.
Regarding the reporting function, you do reporting for 2 sides, the business and the...
Of course, yeah.
It's not only for hire.
Of course, for the business. For example, if I do a compliance inspection today, let's say for a branch, I need to give him a draft of my compliance report because there are issues. He needs to reply as well. It is his right to reply. Maybe there's something I don't understand. Maybe there's something missing from the picture. He needs to put his feedback. If we agreed at the end that yes, there is a non-compliance element, what is a corrective action? What should we do about it? So we need to set up a deadline, we need to set up a corrective action, and we need to comply with this and start correcting. And of course, that needs to be as part of the due diligence information going to the board, for the board to be able to giving me the right decisions. And that's why in one of the trainings that I have done for a board of a certain board of directors of a certain bank, they started clapping to me and they said, thank you very much, you are the first one. Before telling us what are our responsibilities, I started by telling them what are their rights. They were very happy with it. I told them, your right is you have the right to the information. Your right to the information must be accurate information, timely and consistent. They were very happy with it. They said, yes, they hold us responsible and they don't give us information. How can you hold me responsible for taking a wrong decision if you are giving me wrong information? If today I told you you have investment in the stock exchange, if I told you that the stock price is going to fall down, what will you do? You will sell. But if it is in fact is going up, did you take the right decision? No. But based on the information that I gave you, you took the right decision, and that's fraud. What is fraud about? Fraud is a misrepresentation of a fact. I want the victim to take a wrong decision. So I give him a wrong information to act upon this wrong information. Acting upon this wrong information by taking the wrong decision will result in a loss. This is how it is. So you see fraud, money laundering, risk management, corporate governance, they are all interrelated. See, when I talk about any one of them, I have to mention the other parts. Because it's one thing. Don't tell me, well, I'm an AML officer, I should not understand anything about risk management. I should not understand anything about audit. I should not understand anything about corporate governance. That's wrong. I'm not expecting you to be an expert like the chief risk officer. But you cannot be an AML head and you tell me I don't understand risk in totality. How will you apply risk-based approach if you don't understand risk? Right or no? This is how things should be. So again, the lines of defenses should be in harmony. These people should work as one team, not as one group. Group is different from a team. Team, we are working in harmony together. We have a common culture, common understanding. Group, I get different people, the plumber, the carpenter, the electrician, the banker, and put them together in one room. Are these a team? No, they are a group, different types of people. They have nothing in common. We cannot work in our organization as having nothing in common. We have to be working as teams. They could be sub-teams even. Like the compliance is a team within the big team of the bank. We may have a different culture, but that's within subculture within the whole culture of the bank. This is how things should be. And that's the beautiful things that Basel started now to touch on. This is really beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Okay? Customer due diligence and acceptance. See, he didn't say customer acceptance first. They said customer due diligence first, then accept. How will you accept the customer if you don't know anything about the customer? Without due diligence, how will you take a decision? Again, your answer. Without due diligence, I'm blind in the dark. So if I took wrong information, if I've done wrong due diligence, my acceptance will be wrong. If I fail to identify the customer as a PEP, that's a lack of due diligence. I didn't have controls to identify this potential customer as a PEP. So what was the end result? It could be that my customer acceptance policy is saying that, well, our bank has a policy not to deal with PEPs. So what will happen? I will onboard this customer, not know or failing to know that he's a PEP. So I violated my customer acceptance policy. I did not get prior senior management approval. Even if I am allowed to initiate a relation with a PEP, I should have certain procedures which I did not follow. So my customer acceptance was wrong. Can you tell me at the end that you have proper due diligence? No. Poor customer acceptance, poor due diligence will result in dealing with the wrong customers. Everything will go wrong. So customer due diligence and acceptance. Transaction monitoring. I accepted the customer. I gave him a product. The customer will start to transact. Based on that monitoring, of course, at the beginning, there was an initial risk assessment for that customer. Based on what? Based on so many things. Based on Huh? Is there an issue? Okay. لا دي مش سلايس، هي دي طلبت زياده فعشان كده I'm explaining it. Right? So, based on the initial risk assessment, it was based on what? Based on nationality, based on profession, based on political status, based on resident or NRA, non-resident alien. These are the factors that I built based on it, my initial risk assessment. Is this the final risk assessment? Is risk assessment a one-time job? No, it's not. This is the initial one. But once the customer starts operating on the product, starts transacting, then I can increase or lower the risk rating of that customer. In this case, I know him, I see him, I monitor him. And that's why the risk assessment is a dynamic job. It's not done once a life. Right? So, transaction monitoring, systems, and ongoing monitoring. Of course, when I do transaction monitoring, I need to do that also based on a risk-based approach. I cannot monitor all my customers with the same level. Impossible. Because I have so many customers, so many transactions, so many accounts, and I have limited resources. So do I have the right systems in place or not? Do I have the right resources in place or not? And systems is not just the AML system engine, but I would say, do you have proper scenarios? Do you have proper customer grouping and peer grouping? Do you have a proper customer risk assessment? Because all that will identify how your system will operate. You could be buying the most expensive system in the world, state of the art. I'll feed the system with, sorry to say, garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. Don't tell me I invested that much in a system. No. Tell me how your system is performing, evaluating the results. That's what I look for as an auditor. I look at the system. Is it risk-based or not? Is it fitting the bank or not? The worst question I get from banks is, what is the best system? I said, there's nothing called best system. But there's best system for you. But best system like this, there's nothing like this. A best system for one bank may not be the best system for you. So what's your requirements? Before inviting the vendors to bid or to provide a proposal, did you identify your requirements? You will get surprised that 90% of the banks don't. They just sit. They know the requirements from the vendors, which is funny. One customer was asking him, he's telling me which system is better. I said, what do you think? What's your requirement? He said, well, the salesperson of this vendor said so. I said, what is your requirement? Not asking what they are offering you, what they are presenting to you. What is your requirement? He said, I like this system. I said, why did you like it? He said, the system is giving me an SMS alert. I said, so? He said, if I'm on vacation and there is a terrorist in my bank, the system will send me an SMS to my mobile if there is a terrorist in the bank. I said, what will you do? You will jump in the sea? Does that system have an audit trail? Surprisingly, it didn't. I said, which is more important, for a system to have an audit trail or to throw you an SMS service? Are you buying an SMS marketing campaign or you're buying an AML system? Requirements. And these requirements, I always classify it as good to have, must have, not good to have. There are things I don't need it. Like one guy said, I have a demonstration of an AML system that will predict what the customer will do in the future. I said, and? Will you report him today? Will you report to the FIU what the customer will do tomorrow? He said, no, I have to wait till tomorrow. I said, so what did you need this for? Why did you need what the customer will do next week? Right or no? So, do I really need it? So, good to have, must not have. And every option does not come for free. Every option has a price. So you paid for something that you will not use. And you may have missed out on an element which is a regulatory requirement, like audit trail. I saw systems, reputable systems in the market that do not have an audit trail. How can you demonstrate that you have done, for example, the blacklist checking? If the system is not capturing the date and time stamp and the result of the blacklist checking, how would you go today to your regulator or your examiner and tell him that, well, I have checked the customer again in the blacklist if you don't have a log for that? But I have done it. I believe that you have done it, but what is the proof? I'm not saying that you are a liar, but what is the proof? Where is the audit trail? Without an audit trail, for me, you've not done it. I'm sorry. You got the point? So again, these things, and that's why Ram raised a very important point that now regulators are moving to a technical side. Because enough that we are talking, academic. We need to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, compliance officer, here you go. This one, here you go. Oh, I'm happy. Is any of these functioning? None of them are functioning. And that's why, as I said, I was not shy to issue an audit report saying that there is no AML function in the bank. Period. And guess what? That same bank called me up after 3 months, the same bank which I gave you an example a while ago, and he said, can we meet? I went to meet with them. I said, are you still upset with me? They said, no. Can you read this? And they showed me a report from Central Bank. There is no AML function in the bank, and the bank has 90 days to rectify, otherwise the license would be suspended. I said that's the extra thing that I could not write because I'm not a regulator. But that's what the same thing the Central Bank have done. And if you got any other auditor, reputable auditor, they would have done the same. Because you have nothing. I cannot lie to you. What findings I will put if you have nothing? The system doesn't exist. Right? Another thing also, management of information. I was in a panel. I was a speaker in the US. I was in Vegas. And I was a panel with regulators. Beside me was regulators. I was the only one coming from a consultancy side. And I said, look, I'm having the regulator sitting beside me, and I'm telling everybody. The KYC is not just capturing the information. If you capture only information and you put it in box files, you're not making use of it, for me, you have not done your KYC. So you might as well save yourself the effort and don't get the information at all. All the regulators looked at me. I said, yes. Will you issue a finding if you find the bank capturing KYC information, not making use of it? They said, yes. I said, the KYC means capturing the information and also making use of that information. If that information is not reflected on a system, what is the use of that information? Having it in box files as a food for rats? That's what I do? No. Again, after one system implementation, one client called and he was complaining. I said, what's your complaint? He said, one of your scenarios is not working. I said, I'm coming to you. I came, and I know that the problem was the client. I came to them. I said, which scenario is not working? He said, this one. I said, can you read it? Alert me if the customer is depositing 4 times his income in a period of so and so days. He said, that scenario is not generating any alerts. I said, where is the income? He went to the income field and it was blank. I said, are you expecting the system to pick up the phone, call the customer, tell him what's your income, for the system to throw a scenario for you? Fill the income field, do your data cleansing, update your information, and that scenario will work. See how things are. People don't understand what's going on. You don't have enough information and you expect to implement a system like the best. Also, one client called me, he said, I want a system where I press a button and I become compliant. I said, they didn't invent it yet. I'm sorry. Maybe in the afterlife, maybe in paradise, to press a button and become compliant. But now, as of my information, nothing like this exists. And I told them, trust me, you don't need a system like this, because if that system is there, they may automate this function for the button pressing and they don't need you. Why you want to be there? Why do I need you to come and press your finger on the button? I made it an automatic thing, so that's it. You don't need you. People don't understand the essence of things. Think that things are just easy. Go and implement the best system in the world. Go and implement a system that click a button and I become compliant. These things, guys, where are you living? Reporting of suspicious transactions. Again, what is your quality of your STR? What is the main objective? And this is again a question in the exam. What is the objective of the AML program? Objective number 1 is to prevent, detect money laundering, right? Objective number 2 is to report all money laundering suspicious cases, right? There are lots of other objectives to train, to lots of things. But the main 2 objectives is a system of AML that does not prevent money laundering is useless. The system of AML that does not detect money laundering incidents is useless. A system of AML that does not report suspicious transactions is useless. And guess what? There is one system in the market with a UAE firm here, without mentioning the name. The system has two modules. Detect, investigate, no report. And it's selling like hotcakes. I said, okay, after I detect and after I investigate, what do I do? Kill myself? I need to report. Any AML system in the world has 3 modules. Detect, which is the alerting module. Investigate, which is the case management. Report, which is the reporting the STI. That's the basic. You can build anything around this, but this is the heart, the core heart. How an AML system has 2 modules, detect and investigate, and doesn't have a reporting module? Can you imagine?
I have a question. Sure. Because you have been the auditor also. Yeah. So how do you know the quality of STRs? What auditors look for?
Sure. In Middle East or in abroad? Abroad, in abroad there are statistics. Every like the EU, for example, they issue statistics of SAR and STR statistics. In the US, they do that. I use that as a gauging thing. So what is the STR statistics in the market? Let's say the average STRs for so-and-so size banks is, let's say, 20. That bank reported 1,000. I am sure that they are over-reporting. So I go and look at the quality of each one. I will find lots of false positives.
So you mean you will pick and choose STRs?
Yes.
Actual STRs?
Of course.
Go through the write-up, the documents?
Yeah.
On a sample basis?
Of course. Like in Saudi Arabia, I got one bank, I was auditing them just a couple of months back. And the best STR is the most funny one. Why did you report the guy? Because he has a long beard and he has a short dress. That's his basis of suspicion.
Yeah, they are. So, no, what I'm asking is, does auditors look at central bank's responses?
Of course. Yeah.
Because that also...
That's a very important thing, yeah. Of course. Of course, of course.
For example, in 10 STRs, central bank writes you are in breach of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. That shows me how are you doing in your STR. Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay. So, covered, Ram? Good, satisfied? Any question so far? Okay. Done. I'm telling you, if you let me start explaining, we can meet like tomorrow, next year. I have lots to add in. You know, I've seen a lot in my life. Right. So, anything about the Basel paper of 2016? Anything not clear? This is one of the most beautiful papers. Actually, I love Basel papers normally. Even the previous one, I love them.
How many questions will come in the exam for this?
If I sit myself, I can put indefinite number of questions on whatever I've been describing now. Case studies and lots of things. So
now, because they shifted from paper 2001, 2004, now they came to 2016. So mostly maybe they will be asking on 2016.
Mainly, of course, because that's new. Yeah, of course. The main focus will be 2016. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So as I said, as per Basel, if there is a lack of due diligence, the banks will be exposed to various risks, such as reputational risk, legal risk, concentration risk, operational risk, strategic risk, many types of risks. Being the risk management experts, they talk from a risk perspective. And yesterday, of course, we mentioned that the 4 main elements of Basel KYC are customer acceptance policy, customer identification program, ongoing monitoring, and risk management. And we mentioned also about if KYC is a failure, if I fail to identify KYC, I will fail to identify the unusual transaction, I will fail to report proper STRs. So the quality of your STR is, from the beginning, based on the quality of your KYC. I think you had a question here, right? This one? Yep. So any person, so in CDD, in customer due diligence, should be conducted over any person or entity connected with a financial transaction. So any party of the financial transaction should be part of my due diligence. Whether it is an intermediary, whether it is somebody who is having a power of attorney, whether it is another financial institution involved, whether it is an advisor, a lawyer, anybody who is connected with the financial transaction, we should know whom really we are dealing with. Or anybody who can pose a significant reputational or other risk to the bank. The best question I ask banks when they start arguing with me that, well, this is not my customer. Supplement card holder is not my customer. I care about the main account holder. I ask them a very simple question. Okay, if the supplement card holder is Osama bin Laden, no, I have an issue. I said, why? He's not your customer, so why do you have an issue? If I told you Osama bin Laden passed in front of your bank, do you have an issue? For me, I don't. Let him pass. I don't own the road. It's not posing any risk to my bank. But if you tell me Osama bin Laden is holding the supplement card holder of my bank, yes, I have a problem. Why? Because the supplement card holder is my customer. So the best thing to check if that customer is a customer or not, ask yourself, would you care if this guy did anything or you wouldn't? If you wouldn't, that means he's not your customer. If you do care, that means he's your customer.
Do the bank have to do customer due diligence even they don't have a relation? Is there such?
No, we mentioned that due diligence is always attached to the relation. When you establish the relation, you start your due diligence. When you exit the relation, you stop your due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, if the customer is conducting a transaction with a party, okay? In certain cases, does the bank do due diligence on the external party, where the money is moving from your financial institute to that particular party, whether it's another bank, whether it's another customer, whatever the destination of
Yeah.
Is there such?
That person in question, did he get a service from you or no? You need to answer me.
He got the service to the customer.
That I don't want to know through who. Did he get a service, one of your services or not?
No, in this case, I'm not sure. Thank you.
If the answer is yes, he benefited out of your services, that means he's your customer. That means he's your customer. Same like the beneficiary. The beneficiary in different country, he's not mainly having an account with you. But did he benefit? Yes, because the transfer will reach him. You will give him funds through your banking. Did he benefit out of the service? Yes. So in this case, do I need to know the beneficiary? Yes, you need to know the beneficiary.
To which extent you would conduct KYC, not KYC, but enhanced due diligence, and what is the criteria?
The criteria, as I told you, if you want to put it in a nutshell, don't deal with anyone that you cannot identify and make sure that he's a good guy. Whether directly or indirectly.
So how do you make it?
How you make it, it's your job. That's what I said.
You can conduct due diligence with the remitting bank.
Yeah.
Or beneficiary bank.
Like, for example, if I have now an account for an exchange house, do you think I should go and monitor each and every client of the exchange house? No. But what do I need to do? I still have a KYCC requirement. Know your customer's customer. In my case, what I do, I will need to check the controls of that exchange house. Their reputation. Are they connected with any, let's say, blacklisted people? Are they sending money to Iran where it may involve Iranian power? So if yes, that means I have a problem on their customers. That means I should not deal with them. So I don't need to go and stand in the exchange house and see each and every customer coming in. But if I'm comfortable to the controls and their selection of their customers and their compliance, that is a basis for me to say that, well, in this case, I'm knowing my customer's customer because my customer is good and he's very selective in taking, also having controls in dealing with his customers.
I don't know about my colleagues, but if we can go slide by slide rather than general, that would be, because it's a bit hard for me to keep.
To track. Okay. I want you to be with me, actually, because, I mean, that's the most important. Sure. No worries. Okay. Okay, so that answers your question regarding this point? Very good. You're welcome. So any questions so far? Okay. So we mentioned also the risk management and effective KYC procedure should incorporate 4 main elements, and these elements you should memorize by heart: systems and controls, segregation of duties, training, and policies.
Slide MEX has a 179. Slide 179.
And I think here maybe if you add the 2001 here,
Yeah.
That will make it easy.
Sure. Okay. All this has been a review of what we have covered yesterday, and now we will go for the Egmont Group, Ram's specialization. Okay. Egmont Group, of course, is always it is the group of the FIUs. It's the group of the financial intelligence units. These are the members of the Egmont Group worldwide. It's an informal network of FIUs around the world for the simulation of international cooperation, because as we will be discussing next week, part of or one gateway for the international cooperation is through FIUs. An FIU of one country can exchange information leading to an evidence with the FIU of another country. Okay? And they do that through MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings. So the goal here, or the objective here, is to provide a forum for FIUs around the world to improve cooperation in fighting money laundering and terrorism financing, and to foster the implementation of domestic programs in this field. Is it clear? Great. The Egmont Group of FIUs expanded and systemized the cooperation in the reciprocal exchange of information. We have something in the law called the reciprocity. Do you know what does it mean, reciprocity? Yeah? What does it mean? To be treated the same way. So it's reciprocity. Okay? So increasing the effectiveness of FIUs by offering training and promoting personnel exchanges to improve the expertise and capabilities of personnel employed by FIUs. So we need to make sure that the resources are quality resources. There is quality, investigators, quality staff in the FIUs that will help in the investigation, that will help also in the cooperation and the exchange of information. Fostering better and secure communication among FIUs through the application of technology such as the Egmont Secure Web, which is known as ESW. Okay? So again, there is a secure gateway to exchange information among or between FIUs in different countries. Promoting the operational autonomy of FIUs. So we need to make sure that, of course, there are lots of elements to take into consideration when we set up an FIU. They need to have a clear objective. They need to be provided with the proper means and resources. We need to avoid any conflicting functions between the FIU and any other entity. We need to make sure that they're having a proper gateway for cooperation with other FIUs. So there are lots of elements that we take into consideration when we set up an FIU. Independence also is very important, of course. Yeah. Promoting the operational autonomy of FIU, promoting the establishment of FIUs in conjunction with jurisdiction with an AML CTF program in place, or in areas where the program is in the early stages of development. Okay? Being the national center for receiving, analyzing, requesting, disseminating of reports related to money laundering and terrorism financing. That means it is a great function. It is something that it is highly required in any country to be able to fight the crimes and money laundering and terrorism financing. That's all what you need to know about the Egmont Group. Any question? Best, fine. You want more? I think anything more, maybe Ram should come and give us a good training session.
Now, after 2013, there is a new Principles of Information Exchange and Egmont Chapter, which are binding to all the Egmont members. That is more important. As we see, FATF recommendations are binding to members. like Basel Committee, it's not a binding document, but IGMAT Charter and IGMAT Principles of Information Exchange, these two documents are binding for all 151 countries.
That's very good. That's a very good thing. Yeah, of course. This is perfect. Yeah. The more we have binding bylaws, rules, regulations, the better we are. The main actually defect of all this international standards is the non-binding element. That it is optional. And when you leave things optional, nobody wants to take any effort. You know, nobody wants to take any effort. This is the issue. So the more that we have things binding, the better international community we have and the better protection for our financial system we will have. So I strongly recommend, of course, and second that having binding treaties in place, binding bylaws in place, charters in place. The binding element is very important. And that's, I think, in our current scenario, it is required more than any other time. Because we see our things are derailing. Things are going really off track when we leave things loose. So
now, another question is how, whether we are binding or not, how FIU is binding or not, how IGMAT will know. So first is like her question I just asked. We have to do our self-assessment.
Yeah.
There are some triggers
which
are mentioned in the charter and principles of information exchange, where there are some triggers. In the triggers, you have to provide your biannual census, like the statistics and all to them, and they will give you the questionnaires you have to fill out and send them. Secondly, they will take the MER into consideration in that trigger. If you get risk rating, the MER rating is very low, then you will be, you have the triggers will be raised in IGMAT and you have to satisfy them and also to effect.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's a very important thing. Yeah, that's right. Great.
So these triggers, actually, if you cover these two documents with the triggers,
you should be in good shape. Yeah.
Support and compliance process.
Yeah.
It's all there in the website. So
That's right.
things will actually
Very essential. Yeah. That's right. That's right. True. Okay. Now we're going to move to the European Union directives or the EU directives. The European Union directives, the objective is to harmonize the laws between member states to promote cooperation and to maintain an integrated single market. So the whole European Union is considered like one country, one jurisdiction. So we want to harmonize the laws and to have unity in the laws and to make sure that there is a proper cooperation in that big market. Supremacy of EU law over national law. That means being a European country, you have your national law. But if there is a European Union law, that will supersede your national law. So that should have, you know, the higher consideration. So the supremacy of the EU law over your national law. The EU law prevails over domestic law. So whenever there is a conflict between the domestic law and the European Union law prevails, has more power over the national law, being a European Union country. Okay? Europe, of course. For us, it's not mandatory at all. So we are out of this formula. Primary law equal treaties, secondary law equal regulations, directives, etc. So again, in the exam, they told you the primary law in the European Union is treaties. Secondary law is regulations, directives, etc., etc. It is binding as to the result to be achieved upon each member state to which it is addressed, but shall leave to the national authorities the choice of form or method. So how you do it, the method of doing it, that's your call, but you must be complying or binded with the European Union laws.
Here also it is binding.
It is, yeah, binding for the European Union countries only. For the rest, anybody outside the European Union countries, it's not binding. So what are the elements of the EU directives? The important elements are four main elements. Knowledge, scope of the predicate crimes have expanded. Now we have new crimes. We have a new crime named money laundering, you have a new crime named terrorism financing, you have financing of proliferation, and also the predicate crimes, which we have mentioned a while ago, and we said that you don't need to memorize this. It covered environmental crimes, it covered murder, grievous bodily injury, piracy, terrorism. As I said, there is no crime that you would do today and you will not be charged with money laundering. So the scope of the predicate crimes have expanded a lot to cover everything under the umbrella of money laundering. Money remitters, of course, they have highlighted the riskiness of money remitters because these institutions are being used in the layering phase of money laundering. So they are used to move money and move assets around different financial systems in different countries, and that's used heavily by the criminals. And they also highlighted the gatekeepers' risk, like the lawyers, notaries, and those who are supposed to protect the law, prevent criminals from using the financial system, but the corrupted ones of them, they actually provide an advice to the criminals to facilitate their money laundering without even being caught or persecuted. The third EU directive of 2005, this principle in the third directive survived with the passing of the fourth directive in 2015. The directive applies to credit institutions. That's again very important. So again, the EU directive of 2005 applies to which of the following? And I get you some correct, some wrong, and you need to pick up the correct answer. So that you need to memorize. Credit institutions, financial institutions, auditors, external accountants, tax advisors, legal professionals, TCSPs, estate agents, high-value good dealers who trade in cash over 15,000 euros, and casinos. Again, I got some case studies in the exam, and I mentioned that they are dealing in checks or they are dealing in other bank transfers. So in this case, it has to be dealing in cash. Okay, that's again very important thing. So if it is not dealing in cash, in this case, it's not required. Again, I got a case study again for an online casino, and it's not cash. And I mentioned that the transaction were above the threshold, which is set. Will this be part? Yes, it will be part because they said casinos, including online casinos, although they are non-cash. But again, that's part of their requirements. So including internet casinos, that's again very important thing in the material that many people have actually missed. So including internet casinos, okay? Although it's non-cash. You got the point? So again, you need to follow the threshold, although it's a non-cash transaction.
What is this threshold?
The internet casinos is, if I'm not mistaken, 3,000 euros or dollars. So if it exceeds 3,000 euros or dollars,
That is as per recommendation, effective recommendation. As per EU direction,
it's safe. Yeah, it's safe. Okay? But the high-value goods who trade only in cash over 15,000 euros, in this case, they must report. But if not in cash, then they don't need to. The third EU directive of 2005 extends the scope of former directives. It defines money laundering and terrorism financing as separate crimes. That's why we said that the scope of the predicate crime have expanded. It extends customer identification and suspicious activity reporting obligation to trusts and company service providers, life insurance intermediaries. They didn't say insurance company, life insurance intermediaries, and dealers sellers of cash payment of more than 15,000 euros. Details the risk-based approach to customer due diligence, protects employees, reporting STRs, requires statistics regarding suspicious transaction reports, requires identification and verification of the UBO. Okay? Where? 15. No, 15. 10 is the US. 10 is the US. Don't mix. Okay.
There is also here a difference I was talking to my colleague about the EU and the EC. The people get confused also with the EU.
That's right. EAC or
EC is the one of the FATF members, not the EU.
That's right. Yeah. Right? The fourth EU Directive 2015 entered into effect of June 26, 2015. I don't think so. No, I don't think they will. No. Full implementation by June 26, 2017. Member countries have 2 years to adopt the principles into their local law. Yes?
Can you go back to the previous slide and explain it again?
All of it?
The directive applies to?
This one. Applies to all those credit institutions, financial institutions, auditors, external accountants, tax advisors, legal professionals, trust and company service providers, estate agents, high-value good dealers, like dealers in precious metals and stones, who are dealing in cash over 15,000 euros, and casinos. If they are not dealing in cash, they do not need to report. Yeah. But if they are dealing in cash, they need to report. The other thing regarding casinos here, you can put between two brackets, including internet casinos. So even if they are dealing in, because internet casinos, they are not dealing in cash. But internet casinos are also part of the requirement here for reporting large transactions. Each member country must hold beneficial ownership information in a central register, which must be made available to competent authorities. The threshold for entities obliged to report suspicious transactions decreased from euro 15,000 to euro 10,000. That's as per the fourth. That's what you were asking for. That's as per the fourth. But previously it was 15. Yeah, the previous one was 15. This one is 10. Nazilu. The scope of obliged entities increased from casinos to all providers of gambling services. Like, I believe if you want to apply this here, we would get, all this horse racing, if it includes money, that's also part of like a gambling, right? So it here included all gambling services. It does not need to be a casino. So any gambling service is covered. CDD for fund transfer exceeding euro 1,000. EDD should be applied to every PEP, whether the individual is domestic or foreign PEP. So regardless, if he's a foreign or domestic PEP, both of them are covered. Request that member countries conduct an AML risk assessment and designate a responsible authority. Yep. Okay? Again, you need to study by heart. This is very, very important. Okay? Now we're going to move to Wolfsburg Group. And the Wolfsburg Group actually is a group of currently 13 banks. Previously, they were incorporated as 12, but now there are 13. Okay? When they incorporated, there were 12 banks. Now there are 13. So, it's the association of 12 global banks at the incorporation, which aims to develop financial service industry standards and related products for KYC, AML, and counter-terrorism financing policies. The group came together in 2000, so the incorporation was 2000, at Wolfsburg in northeastern Switzerland. That's why they called it the Wolfsburg, based on the city there in Switzerland. And these are the 13 banks who are member of the Wolfsburg. So the members here are banks, the largest banks. Basel, central bank governors, or the heads of the supervisory authorities where in the countries where central bank does not have a formal supervisory role. Banks. Yeah? So these are the 13 large banks that are forming the members of the Wolfsburg Group. The group develops financial service industry standards and principles for AML CTF policies. The group holds no force of law and cannot enforce its standards or impose penalties. Is it mandatory? No. Is it enforceable? No. Important principles include AML guidance for private banking, statement on suppression of financing of terrorism, AML principles of correspondent banking, statement on monitoring, screening, and searching. And I give you some select statements and principles, the name and the year. Okay? The first one, March 2006, second, March 2006, September 2003, November 2002, January 2002, May 2002. So it's from the latest till the oldest.
So last page should only 2006?
Yeah, this I select. I mean, I didn't include everything, but this is just a select. Even before, they just gave a lesser even. So the main things are the principles itself. So they have a principle about private banking, and you have a principle about correspondent banking. These are main principles. Then you have, under these principles, you have two statements, one on the suppression of financing of terrorism, and one on the monitoring, screening, and searching. And mainly these were related to September 11, where the financing of terrorism happened through Citibank, and that's why they issued a statement on suppression of financing of terrorism. And they also, when also Citibank lost their private banking license in Japan. So the principles are mainly when there is a disaster happening to their member banks, and the main disasters happened as financing of the September 11 operations through one of their banks, and one of their main banks losing their private banking license in Japan. So these are two major events that happened to them, which triggered having principles to prevent other banks, member banks, in falling in the same issues. Yes? Fighting terrorism financing. So again, as I told you, this was post-September 11, where the financing of terrorism financing happened through one of the member banks of Wolfsburg. It's a paper. It's a paper discussing the suppression of financing of terrorism. How can we suppress financing of terrorism? How can we stop funding?
So is there any name for that one, or this is the name?
This is a name. Yeah. That's why, as I told you here, I put it in more. If you see here when the animation coming, this is Wolfsburg statement, issued in March 2006, talking about guidance on risk-based approach for managing money laundering risk. Another statement issued in the same month, AML guidance for mutual funds and other pooled investment vehicles. Another statement issued on September 2003, monitoring, screening, and searching. Principle, that's about correspondent banking. Statement again, the suppression of the financing of terrorism, and another principle about the private banking. So these two are mainly principles. The rest are all statements. مهمة. أكيد. لا مش مع التواريخ. You don't need the dates, but you need to know that there are two principles, one about private banking, one about correspondent banking, and the main statements are mainly the suppression of the financing of terrorism and also the monitoring, screening, and search. These are the main statements. So you need, if they told you that monitoring, screening, and searching is a principle, no, it's a statement. Recommend controls for private banking. Of course, the Wolfsburg Group on private banking. That's a paper. So it has different sections. And mainly it recommends controls for private banking to avoid what has happened to Citibank, losing their private banking in Japan. Ranges from customer identification to enhancing due diligence, such as increased scrutiny on individuals who have or have had positions of public trust, which is the PEPs. Objective is to make it harder and difficult for corrupt people to deposit their ill-gotten gains in the world's banking system. That's why we are not mainly concerned about PEP, but we are monitoring PEP very heavily to make sure that he's not a corrupted PEP. So the PEP as such, and that's why many banks call me, do you have PEP blacklist? I said PEP is not a blacklist. Not anybody who's holding a political position is a blacklisted person. But there is a PEP list. Okay. So why do we need to look at the PEP list? Because we need to identify if the person is PEP or not, to monitor him closely, to ensure that he is not connected to any corruption and the source of his funds is not an outcome of any corruption. So this needs to be understood. But PEP is not a blacklist. Okay? Objective is to make it harder for corrupt people to deposit their ill-gotten gains into the world's banking system. Highlight the need to identify the beneficial owner of funds for all accounts. Require further due diligence on public officials, high-risk countries, and activities. At least one person other than the private banker should approve new clients and accounts. That means we need another senior management approval for dealing with private banking because it's higher risk. Banks should have written policies, procedures, and controls on the identification and follow-up on unusual or suspicious transactions. Address the reporting to management of money laundering issues. Proper AML training. Retention of relevant documents. Deviation from policies must be approved. It should always be the exception, not the usual case. So We should always avoid any deviations from the policy, and if there is any deviation, that's an exception that needs to be approved and justified. Why am I deviating from my policy? But that should not be the standard case. I'll give you an example I had in the US. Okay. I got a call from my frontliners. They said, we are trying to establish a relation. We went through your customer acceptance policy. And I mentioned in the part of the customer acceptance policy that the customer must fill the application form and he must sign. The prospect customer who was there at that time, he was a retired armed forces officer who have lost his thumb, right? So he cannot sign. So they said, now the guy cannot sign. What do we do? For me, it was a new scenario. I didn't know what needs to be done, so I had to go back to my regulator. I said, I have a customer, potential customer, whom I am in the process of accepting the customer, and as part of the requirements of the US, that the customer must sign, the application forms and the KYC forms and so on, but the customer cannot sign. So I said, is there any workaround? Can we take, for example, the finger print? Like in Egypt, the fingerprint prevails over signature. But in the US, I was surprised that they said, no, fingerprinting in the US has no value. Cannot be considered in any legal document. So they said, if the customer cannot hold the hand by any means, by his right hand, by his left hand, by any two fingers, and make an image that he can repeat it, you cannot accept this customer. Okay? Let's say if they gave me a waiver. They said, okay, the normal case is that the customer has to sign. Let's assume that they said, okay, in such case, rare case, based on that he is, let's say, a retired armed forces officer, we will give him an exception. So in this case, I'm going to deviate from my standard policy. Then I need to get an approval for that, and I need to justify why I have deviated from my standard policy that the customer must sign.
So the approval you got it from your regulatory, not from your senior.
No, depending on the case. If for example, I mean, this is because this is a regulatory issue, I had to go back to my regulator. But let's say, if it's an internal policy, then I need to get, like, for example, the right level of management to approve that deviation based on this case, and we need to justify why we have deviated from our standard policy. I haven't came across this, to be honest, but I would. Huh? Yeah, I haven't. Luckily, I haven't. I go through this guy, and I thought it's an easy case, so I thought that they will give me a waiver, but they were very strict. They said no. If with no signature, you cannot enter into a relation. I said he's a retired armed forces officer, so you should at least, recognize what he has done for the country.
Because here, I think there would be a problem to open an account for
Yeah, because so many things. First of all, I would say you need to go back to your local regulations and your policy. Do you accept establishing a relation through a power of attorney? If yes, then you can. If no,
I mean, they do have accounts, but they need someone to be with them, I think, regarding.
Yeah, but my concern is as the establishment of the relation. If he's doing transaction, fine. I can get a power of attorney or a guy who's an agent. He can accompany him and he can transact. But I'm talking about the establishment. No, as an agent, if I have a power of attorney, I can sign on his behalf. Yeah, he's giving power of attorney. So, but at the beginning, I don't, normally in my bank, I don't establish a relation based on a power of attorney. Yeah, because power of attorneys, I will tell you out of my experience, have been heavily misused. I had a big case in Kuwait. I presented it in front of the Financial Crime Bureau there. I made it in a form of a presentation. Once I started showing them the relations and the type and the profiling of the customer accounts involved, all of them were above 80 or non-resident, and all of them were unaware that they had a relation with our bank. Agents. And I started drawing for them the relation. between each customer and the agents in the middle. So you'll find one agent has 86 power of attorneys on all these accounts that are involved. On this account. So he enters the bank, he deposits, then he withdraws based on the power of attorney to the other account, then he makes a transfer with the power of attorney, he makes a transfer. The amount used to stay in the account, you will not believe me, seconds. Seconds. He goes to two tellers, he tells the teller, make me a transfer. By the time I go and make a deposit. So two tellers are doing the same transaction. To the extent that I found one problem in my IT system, that there was two transactions, the difference between them was part of the second. If you print the statement, you will find that the account has been overdrafted, whereas this customer doesn't have an overdraft facility. Because the two tellers were pressing enter almost at the same time. But the amount was credited, then transferred. But when you print a statement, because they are same, the system, because it has a same timestamp, they put them opposite. So when it put it opposite, the debit became previous than the credit, it showed an overdraft. Can you imagine? Literally, it was like this. So after I made this presentation, they said, wait a minute, is this in our country? I said, yes, get me all those people. I remember this presentation very well. It took me 3 months of investigation to get to know the network. Yeah, it was hard. We were talking about 19 million Kuwaiti dinar every month. Monthly. Kuwaiti dinar. And every quarter, you have more than 200 people new accounts. They flipped the account. They finished this account. All of them were either minors, non-residents, or very elderly people. Very elderly people. Yeah, they are using the accounts. None of the elderly people knew that they have an account with our bank. They said, we don't have an account with your bank. All this through power of attorney. That's why since then, I said, no establishment of a relation with a power of attorney. If the customer doesn't come to the bank, I will not establish a relation. You can establish, then after that you can send your agent, I don't mind, to transact, as far as they're giving you a power of attorney. But to establish a relation, I need the customer. As I told you, I've seen a lot in my career. So yeah, criminals, they do everything. And one of those agents were also on the blacklist. That's what we discovered after that. Because again, there was a flow that we were not monitoring except those who are having accounts. For them, that's not my client. That what I said, like, this is your client. And that's why when we started building a database for them, I started opening for each one who's holding a power of attorney, a customer file. Because at the end of the day, I can monitor them again in the blacklist. Then I started to get alerts that there are people who are blacklisted and they're entering into my bank, the UBO, using other good people's accounts. Okay? Providing official lists of suspected terrorists on a globally coordinated basis by relevant authorities, including adequate information in the list to help institutions search customer databases efficiently. Providing prompt feedback to institutions following circulation of the official lists, providing information on a manner, means, and methods used by terrorists, developing governmental guidelines for business sectors and activities identified as high risk for terrorism financing, developing a uniform global format for funds transfers that assist in the detection of terrorism financing. Again, among the major flows I see also based on my job as a consultant and as an auditor, that banks, they don't realize that the blacklists are very dynamic. We provide a blacklist, we are a blacklist provider. Our lists get updated once every 8 hours. So that means 3 times per day. 3 times per day I have updates on my database. So if you check the customer only once a life, good people can become bad people after that. So when I checked him today, he was off the list. But who tells me that he's going to be off the list for the rest of his life?
You should establish a routine.
Daily, at the end of the day, we do a daily blacklist checking. And actually, if I am doing the implementation, I do it in a very smart way, not to create a huge traffic. So what do I do? Of course, we check a time where the server is low on traffic, but not to make it very quick, because my process takes very quick. I check all new customers. Again, it's the whole blacklist. and I check the existing customers on the additions on the list. So to avoid checking all the customers against all the list. So I do what I call a differential check. New customers has not been checked at all, so I need to check them against the whole list. Existing customers has been checked until midnight yesterday, so I need to check them against whatever names have been added or removed from the list since yesterday. So you check, for example, 10 new customers against 1 million, and you check the changes, which is like 10 against your 1 million customer. So 10 against 1 million would be easy, but 1 million against 1 million, it will take longer time. Due diligence should be risk-based depending on the location, type of business, ownership, customer base, regulatory status, and AML controls of the correspondent banking client or business. An institution should not offer its product or services to a shell bank. No shell bank. Okay? So as per the Wolfsburg, no shell banks. Generally, the principles should not apply to central banks and monetary authorities of member countries of FATF or multinational institutions such as International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. All correspondent banking client information should be reviewed and updated periodically based on the risk factors. Discusses the need for appropriate monitoring of transactions and customers to identify potentially unusual or suspicious activity and transactions, and for reporting such to competent authorities. Covers issues related to the development of risk-based processes for monitoring, screening, and searching of transactions and customers. Real-time screening should only be required for screening and filtering related to embargoes or sanctions and financial institutions. Of course, I'm moving here through the different statements and principles of the Wolfsburg. Two principles, no, and more than one statement. There are more than one statement. There are only two principles, and there are more than one statement. This is it's like the recommendation and the paper of the FATF. You have a recommendation, you have a paper. So principle is mainly the core. Then you can have lots of other statements, right? So we have two principles, this one, and 1, 2, 3, 4 statements. So we have more than one statement, but we have two principles.
Yeah, like we can see their statement, they are mentioning guidance.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So it's like FATF recommendation, and after that they will issue guidance on that recommendation.
Yeah, I understand that.
Exactly.
I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, for example, for the correspondent banking, these are the different sections of the correspondent banking. No. Just FYI. Private banking, these are the different sections, FYI. Okay? Now, one of the very important things that the Wolfsburg Group have highlighted is the UBO. And I really love this definition. Recognition that a person on whose name an account is opened with a bank is not necessarily the person who ultimately controls such funds or who is ultimately entitled to such funds. Beautiful definition of a UBO. Beautiful one. Very important. Very important. Of course. Comes without saying. Right? If you want to have more information, you can visit their website, www.wolfsburg-principles.com. Yes?
Can you repeat again what is the principle and which one is the statement?
Yeah. You have two principles only, as I said. Correspondent banking and private banking. The rest are all statements. Okay? Perfect. Okay, any question about Wolfsburg Group? Yeah. Yeah, that means, as I said at the beginning, if I'm a bad guy, I'm not going to be coming to open an account with your bank, but I'll open an account in the name of a good guy. Then I'll be taking control on this account. So, when I come to the bank and open an account, I am normally the beneficiary and the beneficial owner of that account. If I give a power of attorney on the account, I am not both, right? So, Will I be the beneficiary or the beneficial owner?
You give power.
Yes. So I'm the account holder, and let's say Ram is my agent. I give Ram power of attorney.
You are the he's the beneficiary, I am the beneficial owner. He is the owner. He's the owner, okay.
He is the one who can control the account. I'm the beneficiary. He is the owner. So he can control this account. So what happens is, if I'm a good guy and the criminal doesn't want to appear in the picture, so he will ask me to open an account, then he will have a control over that account. You got the point? And that's why, as I said, if you think that your customers are those who are maintaining accounts only, that means you don't know all your customers.
So you have to know your customers.
Exactly. That means you need to know whoever you are dealing with, whether he is account owner or whether he is at the background. I have also a white paper that I've issued. It's called the Muppet holder. You know the Muppets? Yeah. So you can see the Muppet, but you don't see the Muppet holder. I want to see the Muppet holder. Who's moving these Muppets? Who's giving them instruction? Puppets. Yeah. Right? So you need to see who is moving them. Okay? So any question about the Wolfsburg Group? Okay. Thank you.